Hey, Thrive, if you are leading anything, you're looking forward to this moment. We have Patrick Lencioni with us. And Patrick, first of all, welcome to the Thrive Global Summit. We're glad you're here.
It's great to be here, Ray. It's really great to be here.
Thank you. Well, I have a million questions, so I'm just going to dive into all of these. Our staff has given me, leaders around the world have said, here's what we want to hear from Patrick. And I'm going to back this up one and say this. Almost everybody I know in every sphere has read 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, okay? Are those 5 still as true now as when you first wrote that book in 2002?
I am glad to say they seem to be, based on the reaction we get from readers and practitioners around the world. And certainly in our own practice, we think that they are no less relevant and not really different. We really wrote that book for high-tech, for small high-tech firms. And when we saw that different organizations in different countries of different sizes and for-profits, nonprofits, churches all applied to it, we were pretty glad. And I can say that all these years later, it seems to be no less relevant. So,
yeah, Patrick, it's been a great handbook for even our team. You say something in there that most people have never thought about, which is this. Important to a team is both trust and conflict.
Right.
Most of us see those as opposites. Why is it important to have both?
Well, trust has to precede conflict. I think the big question is, why is conflict important? Conflict is how we get at truth, healthy conflict. And if people trust one another inherently, if they're vulnerable, which means they know the other person will admit when they're wrong and they know their intentions are good, then they can have conflict knowing that it's all about pursuing truth or the best possible answer. Yep. But if there's no trust, conflict becomes politics. So one precedes the other. And conflict on a team is a fantastic thing as long as it's healthy and based in trust.
Absolutely. So let me ask you a specific question about Bayside. We have the most multicultural, most diverse senior pastor team at the top. And what's happened recently in our setting, like most settings, is there is massive conflict in America right now in almost every front. And the emotions on everybody is on DEFCON 10. Yeah. Including our own team. So we are in my backyard last night having a conversation with our team just to make sure we're okay and at least listen to each other. If you were going to give my team or everybody else that's in conflicted situations any advice about what to do, what would you tell them?
Well, I would say you've got to first go back and affirm that trust, because having conflict with somebody, if trust is broken, is not fruitful, and it's often dangerous. And in society, in public society right now, there's not a lot of trust. And so speaking publicly leaves yourself open to people misinterpreting. But with those you love and those you know, first you got to go back and realize, hey, we are brothers and sisters in Christ, like in your organization. Yep. So our hearts are all in the right place, right? Okay, yep. If we all know that, then we can listen to one another and be open to different perspectives. And that's great. But if you're talking to somebody where there's not trust, conflict and exchange of ideas is not going to be fruitful, because people just aren't yet in a place to listen. So we have to make sure that trust has been rebuilt or reaffirmed before we can exchange different perspectives, because we need to know that they're going to be well received.
Yep. Patrick, I love your podcast, At the Table. Matter of fact, I'd highly recommend everybody subscribe. And we'll get back to that in a minute. One of the leadership qualities that comes through in your conversations and your values is authenticity, transparency, vulnerability. Whereas most of us leading something, we're usually visionary, amped up, motivational, and yet you're using words like authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability. Why is that important to you as a leader? And why does that seem like these days it's even more important to organizational culture?
Yeah, I think it's more important because what we've gone through with the shutdown and COVID and all this other stuff, I think we've been exceedingly human for the last 4 months. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a good thing, but it's also been a very unmanaged, imperfect thing. We've all shown up in our living rooms, in our underwear and with our teams and in need. And I think so we've become more human. And so that's a good thing. I think it's important because, one of my driving motivations in starting my own company and what we do is that we want people to show up at work and be in their true selves. And there's some amazing competitive advantage when people come to work and don't have to pretend they're something they're not. And I worked in organizations where you had to go on and put on a facade, and you just weren't your best self. You didn't enjoy being there. You were exhausted, and there were politics. So what we think is that if you can be raw and you can be vulnerable and you can be humble and open, everybody can bring their best selves to work. And it proves true. And I think that it bears itself out in terms of the fruits of your labor too. And that's true whether you're a church or a hospital or a school or a Fortune 500 company. People need to be able to come to work and be their full human self. And I think that that's why we emphasize that. And I think that's something that's will continue as we come out of this time.
You know, it's funny. One of the things I like about you, Patrick, is you're doing a lot of thinking for the rest of us. The vast majority of people that are listening to this, they're not the CEO, they're not the senior pastor, they're in the middle somewhere. What would you say to everybody that's going, I'm not in charge, I want my company healthier? What advice would you give them?
Yeah. Well, I would go back to Stephen Covey, who said, focus on your circle of influence and don't get too distracted by your circle of concern. So if your circle of influence is your department or your area within your organization, make that great. It's so easy for us to think, well, I want to solve problems around the world or in the nation as a whole, but I'm not dealing with my own family, or my own neighbors, or my own company. And so what I would say is this: be content with focusing on your circle of influence, and then your circle of influence will eventually grow. But if you get too caught up watching the news and thinking about things at a level beyond yours, or in your own company, if you're too worried about what the CEO is doing or another department is doing, and you're not fully taking advantage of everything you could do in your own area, you're going to find yourself frustrated, and your influence is actually going to shrink. So have the humility and wisdom to deal with what you can do. I suppose it's like the serenity prayer, right? To know the difference between what you can change and what you can't, and to accept the difference. And what happens is people start to say, what's going on in your department? What's going on in your ministry at our church? Maybe there's something we can learn from you. And that requires humility and trusting in God and a sense of wisdom that is really important right now. And I can't wait to ask you this question. You have access to great leaders. You have access to great companies through your consulting work. And so here's my question. What separates great leaders from average leaders? You know, it's interesting. This answer has really probably changed a little bit during these last 5 months. I think that leaders who can be exceedingly human, right when the COVID thing came out, one of our clients said, "Hey, Pat, I'd like to hear what you think I should do as a CEO." So we wrote this little article. I wrote it in the middle of the night, like on the third night of the shutdown. And I said, this is a time to be exceedingly human and to pour into people and not worry about being careful. Just pour into people and know what's going on in their lives and care about them and reveal what's going on in your life too. And what I've found is the CEOs in the world, whether it's Gary Kelly at Southwest Airlines or Alan Mulally, who was at Ford, or whether it's a small company or a church or a school right now, the ones that are really most successful are the ones that are exceedingly human. They're not over managing their perception. They're being people first, and they're letting people into their lives. And as a result, people will follow them and trust them. But when a leader always seems to have their act together, and when they never seem to have any vulnerabilities or any weaknesses, people actually have a hard time trusting them. Now, that's not to say that you should do this primarily on camera in front of thousands and thousands of people. I'm talking around in the people that you're leading every day, or the larger group in your organization that works with you. Be human and lean into their humanity. And I know that sounds soft, but all the other stuff, strategy and technology and finance and all that other stuff, without that humanity, people just aren't going to believe you and follow you in those technical areas. So the humanity has to come first. And I think that's become more and more apparent to me. We have people listening to this right here going, that is brilliant. And almost nobody's saying it. Okay. You said I'm thinking for others. I think I'm making mistakes for others is what I'm doing too. One of the things I realize is that running my own small company and really leaning into this and seeing the things I do wrong is what I learn from. And so I don't want people to think that it's about being perfect. It's about actually going, wow, I really screwed that up. I need to share this with people so they don't.
Yep. Well, you have a brand new book out called The Motive.
Right.
And first of all, let me just set it up. I read everything you write.
I appreciate that.
And pretty much, I write books, you write books, and I never write a book that I don't want every single human being to read.
Right.
What motivated you to write a book called The Motive?
You know, what it was, Ray, is I've been writing books for years about how to be a better leader, how to run a team, how to run a meeting, how to build an organization. And one day, it was a few years ago, I was with a bunch of CEOs and I was giving them my advice about something. And I noticed that there were a number of them who seemed to think that the advice I was giving was pretty ridiculous. And I was asking them questions and they were like, I'm never going to do that. And what I realized was their motivation for being a leader in the first place was not really the appropriate one. And so all of my advice seemed foolish. And what I realized that there's actually two reasons why a person becomes a leader. And this can change and it can slide to the worst one or it can get better. But the two reasons are, I see leadership as a reward for a lifetime of hard work. I've arrived and now I get to do what I like to do. And I get to do what brings me pleasure or attention or money or whatever else. So it's called reward-centered leadership, which is very common in society. The other motive for leadership is what I call responsibility-centered leadership, where you realize you have a huge burden to serve the people you lead, and that the personal economics of that are not great, and you're okay with that. You have to sacrifice and suffer first and more than anyone else in the organization. And you're okay with that because you see leadership as a vocation, not as a means of self-aggrandizement or pleasing yourself. And these are so stark. I mean, think about the difference between somebody who goes into leadership and says, wow, finally I get to choose what I do. I'm not going to do things I don't like. I get to do the things I enjoy and the things that bring me pleasure or attention. Versus somebody else who says, I have to go in and do the things that nobody else wants to do because I'm the leader. And if I don't do them, nobody will. That is a stark difference. And you know, Ray, one of the best things is good leaders who had drifted read the book and said, this book shocked me because I realized I was doing some of the things for the wrong reasons. And now I have to change. And I've done things. I have been a reward-centered leader at times in my life. And so this is not a matter of black or white, you're one or the other. It's a matter of where are you right now and re-enlist, recommit to responsibility-centered leadership, sign up for the suffering, and it'll be a fantastic job. And of course, this comes from Christ. You know, I mean, he suffered and died for us. Leadership, you know, one of the things I like to say, Ray, is I'm looking forward to a day when nobody says servant leadership anymore because there's no other type. Everybody is supposed to be a servant leader. And the fact that we will call out somebody as a servant leader is almost admitting that the other one is valid too. And it's just not. If you're a leader, you are a servant, period.
Absolutely. And we have a lot of pastors tuning into this, as well as a lot of business people. And as a pastor, this whole area can get even worse. Because not only are you leading an organization, every weekend, a few thousand people gather to hear your thoughts for 40 minutes. And at some point, Patrick, the conversation our pastors around here have had over and over and over again is all leaders have ego. All leaders want impact. And if we can keep impact above ego, we're going to be fine. The minute it flips, everything seems to self-destruct.
You know, what I'd love to say to pastors is this, and I work with a lot of pastors. One of the things, there's 5 things that leaders who are struggling with reward-centered leadership don't do because they're unpleasant and they're uncomfortable, and they tend to delegate them or abdicate them. And one of the biggest ones that pastors struggle with is having uncomfortable conversations with people. And it's so funny because it's like Jesus went around and always assessed the situation, and this is the Son of God and God made man. So I don't like to just hold him up as a leader. He was perfect. But
we got that.
But he had lots of uncomfortable conversations for the good of the other person. And so many pastors, because they're like, I think I'm supposed to be their shepherd. I need to affirm them. I don't want them to feel bad. When it comes time to have that difficult conversation with somebody who's music ministry isn't good, or their children's ministry isn't good, or they're not doing a good job in finance, or they're behaving poorly at meetings. When the pastor has to have that difficult conversation, they're like, I don't want to do that because the last thing I want them to think is that I'm not kind. Of course, love requires that we have difficult conversations. And so this is true of all leaders, all CEOs. But when you're a pastor, it's particularly important and really, really hard. So one of the 5 things that leaders don't like to do when they're struggling with reward is having difficult, uncomfortable conversations with the people who need it from them.
And there are 5 of those things in that book.
Yes.
Okay.
The other ones are they don't like to actually manage their direct reports as people. Like they think, well, I've arrived. I'm a leader. I'm the pastor now. I hired these people to run their departments. They don't need me as a manager for guidance. And it's like, nope, they do. The CEO of Nike has to manage this. The executive vice president of marketing at Nike. Just because you're older or make more money or you're higher in your organization doesn't mean you don't need to be managed, because management is just direction, feedback, and coaching. And too many leaders get to the top and go, I don't want to have to do that anymore. Well, it's like, that's okay. That's the job. If you don't manage that person, nobody will. Another one is running great meetings. A lot of leaders are just like, well, meetings are just bad. They're corporate penance. Let's just get through them. Nope. Your job is to make them great. Another one is building the leadership team, not in some sort of offsite one-off way. Your job is to knit these people together, to teach them to be vulnerable. Those 5 dysfunctions, that is one of your primary jobs, and no head of HR can do it. No consultant can do it for you. You have to be the primary sponsor of that happening. The last one is you have to constantly repeat yourself. Great leaders are CROs, Chief Reminding Officers. And it doesn't matter if you're bored with the message. It doesn't matter if you think people already get it. Until you've repeated again and again and again, 7 times, people don't really get it in their gut. Jesus repeated himself in creative ways. He didn't get bored. He said that I'm here to help you understand the truth. And it wasn't about him. It was about them hearing it. And as leaders, sometimes we get bored and we want to move on to something else. And let me tell you, the best leaders in the world are constantly finding creative ways to repeat themselves.
Boy, that is good. By the way, Patrick, I'm 0 for 5. I've been taking notes here, but we'll read this one. And just a quick comment to those of you that are watching. That book is brand new. It is his latest book. It is The Motive. And we're just going to recommend y'all go get it. Okay, there's a link on our site. Now would be a great time, but wait till the end of this conversation to get it. But it's called The Motive because can you imagine what it would be like if every government leader, every business leader, and every ministry leader led not out of some sense of self-importance or for the rewards, but every basically went, man, I am here to serve these people.
Hey, Ray, you know one thing I'll say about the book? 2 things. One, it's the shortest book I've ever written. I'm pretty happy with that. That always makes me happy when I get a book. The other thing is people say it's the kind of the most interesting fiction. There's a lot of twists and turns and conflict in it. So it's readable. It's short.
That's great.
And a lot of people have said this is one of their favorites. So.
Yep. Hey, Patrick, you recently filmed a video talking to college graduates. Right now, what would you say to a college graduate?
So 2 days ago, my sons, my twin boys, I have 4 boys, my oldest boys graduated from college at Santa Clara University.
Congratulations.
And I got to go down because they didn't have a real graduation ceremony. So my wife and I helped create one for a bunch of their friends. And I got to go give a 1-page address to them, which was fantastic. And the biggest thing I would say to college grads is this: what happened to your last bit of college is true. And it's a bummer. And lean into that and don't let people say, well, get over it. It's okay to go, yes, that was hard. Mourn the loss of that last 2 or 3 months. And a lot of people didn't get to say goodbyes, didn't get to finish college. But resilience is more important than anything else. Because in life, it's the people who respond to things well and see the blessing and the opportunity in a challenge, even in suffering. Those are the people that are successful. Some people can take a huge body blow, a horrible thing in life, and go, okay, what am I going to do with this? And how am I going to trust God and find the goodness here? Other people can have a slight setback and say, why did this happen to me? This is unfair. And real success comes through resilience. And of course, I would be remiss if I didn't say, And the way to do that is to realize that standing right behind you every moment of your life, whether you realize it or not, is Jesus saying, I'm ready for you to turn to me no matter what you've done, no matter what you've believed, no matter how close you feel to me. The moment you're ready, just turn. Matt Maher has a great song. It just turn around. He's right there.
Boy, that is good. It's fine. At some point, I'm going to take just a side comment here. We need to take that last 1 minute, cut it out, and blow it up and send it everywhere. That is brilliant. Oh, the phrase we use around here is, the only people that have a great future are people that respond to bad news in great ways.
Exactly.
And Nehemiah responds to bad news in great ways. By the way, Patrick, same thing with this conference. I mean, our Thrive conference, you've been here before. We have about 4,000 people. We have about 6,000 people total, okay? When it was canceled, I basically went, if I can let go of discouragement and replace it with dreaming fast, we dreamt up taking Live Aid and TED and a Christian conference and smashing it together and doing the first ever global online, completely free fundraising for kids affected by COVID deal. And it has blown sky high, way beyond there. But that doesn't happen without some resilience.
Yeah, and knowing that God gives us everything he gives us in life is to bring us closer to him in some way and to better serve him. I say this prayer usually at the 3:00 hour every day called the Divine Mercies. And at the end of it, it just says, help me, God, to realize that everything I go through is in your mercy. Everything you give me is a show of mercy for me, and it's part of your will. And man, when you realize that, you can go, holy Toledo, this thing happened to me that seems kind of terrible. Okay, God, there's a pony in there somewhere.
Yep.
There's that joke. There's a pony in there somewhere. There's something really good here that he has intended for me, but we have to seek it out.
Yep. So I have a couple rapid fire fun questions. Here we go.
Okay.
Other than things you've written, best book someone should read right now?
Wow, right now. So I have this, Dean Koontz is one of my favorite authors.
Me too.
And he's, people think he's a horror writer, but he's actually a strong Christian, and it's amazing. When you read it, if you read it with that in mind, you see amazing things. And he has a book called Brother Odd, Brotherhodd. And it's a fiction story about this, it's a supernatural story about this guy. And it's just fantastic fiction. It's my favorite book I think I've ever read, Brother Odd.
Boy, that's cool.
I'm also reading a book, a devotional called The Better Part, from Martha and Mary. She's chosen The Better Part. And it's by Father John Bartunek, this priest. So The Better Part is fantastic. Those would be the two books right now that I find myself drawn to.
Fantastic. Best podcast somebody should subscribe to right now?
Wow. I can't believe this, but I don't even want to say.
Okay.
Because people these days judge for the wrong reasons. And there's a few that I listen to that I think are beautiful. And yet in this day and age, if you say something and people want to find something bad, they will.
That's good. Is there a new app or a new tool or a new resource that you would recommend people check out?
Absolutely. I didn't, I'm not an app guy, although I have them all over my phone. I use them, but I don't think about things in apps. But so when somebody said this new movie came out, but you had to download the app, I was like, what are you talking about? But The Chosen?
Yes.
Fantastic.
And, that's good.
And it's an app. So it's like, young people are sitting here like our producer, Morgan. This is the world she lives in. But I was like, no, movies are on TV or at the theater. And it's like, no, it's actually an app, and you download it and you watch it there, and it's wonderful.
Yep. I've got two last questions, and here's the heavyweight one. Then I have an easier one. The heavyweight one was this. We're living through a global pandemic.
Yep.
Followed by an economic crisis, followed by a mental health crisis, followed by a race and justice crisis.
Yep.
And it feels like people are getting hit by wave after wave after wave after wave. And it's almost like it is a time for leaders to show up and lead. And what leadership trait, in your opinion, is going to be most important in terms of leading back into a new reality?
So what I think it is you have to find your peace, and you have to transmit that to others. because it's not about having the right answers, because there's no easy answers in any of this. But it's about saying, hey, everybody, and we're doing that here in my company. Hey, you know something? If you don't have peace, which is the whole purpose of our lives, right? And so get on your knees and plead for peace in the midst of this.
That's good.
Because there's never been a time, and Jesus made this clear, that we would not be troubled. And yet the key is, are we seeking him and seeking peace in the midst of it? And if I can have that peace as a leader, then when I get together with people, even if they're experiencing hurt or frustration or confusion, then I can lean into that. Even if I don't have the answer, I can say to them, it's okay to have peace. And as a result of that, we will probably develop better trust and be able to seek answers together. But if I lose my peace, I'm not going to be useful for them.
Yep, that is good. And my last question, here's the lightweight one. You have a podcast, At the Table.
Yeah.
Tell folks about it, what they get out of it if they subscribe to it, because I'm going to encourage everybody to do just that.
So At the Table, it's At the Table with Patrick Lencioni. We're going to go do an episode right now after this. We just talk about the world of work. Anything relating to the world of work in a liberal arts kind of way, like how it relates to our lives. It might be leadership, it might be meetings, it might be family, and it's very human, it's very fluid, and it's growing like crazy. And we had no idea that people would be. So there's a lot of people that are just interested in work-related stuff. And like one of the things we're going to talk about in an hour is, we think that after people are coming back from COVID, that the whole nature of coming to work and working in an office should change. That the idea of sitting behind a desk in a computer or in a cubicle, that people are coming back more human and more in need than ever. There needs to be more flexibility, more interaction. And so we're going to propose that today. And we love the feedback we're getting from listeners. And because it's very real, it's very fluid, it's not overproduced, and it's not very long, but it's very raw. And so At the Table with Patrick Lencioni, people seem to be loving it, and they're adding numbers all the time. So I would love it if anybody out there, if we could, one or two people that are on this could start listening as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, those of you watching this from 60 countries in every state,
amazing.
It is. It's quite surprising. Go subscribe to this right now. We keep saying this over and over and over here. Nobody lives well, nobody loves well, and nobody leads well until they think well. And Patrick, I just want to thank you for helping everybody think so well, not just about leadership, but about life. And congratulations on your twin sons, my friends. As a dad of twin daughters, well done.
Thank you. God bless you all.
You bet. Same thing.